Hello, everyone. It's lovely to see you all. So many faces.
Yeah, lots of familiar faces.
Indeed. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
We'll be starting in just a minute or so, once we let everyone in and everyone's connected. Everyone's got themselves muted already, so that's great. Thank you. We'll be starting in just a minute or so. I'll just introduce myself. I'm Janice Coffey. I'm here in my capacity as the chair of Montessori Schools and Centres Australia. And we're very, very excited to be bringing this talk to you this evening in cooperation with Sydney Montessori Training Centre as well. And I can see we have some faces from SMTC, which is our AMI training hub here in Australia. We'll hear a little bit more about AMI and some of the things that SMTC are offering this year as well, if you are interested in doing some further training. We'll get started in a minute or so. Looks like we've got lots of people joining us. I know we've got lots of educators and lots of parents with us this evening too. I can see we've got lots of Montessori trainers with us as well. So what a wonderful mix of people, and hopefully we have a wonderful opportunity to also have some conversation tonight too. Just so we all know, the session is being recorded. So you would have seen that as you signed in this evening. And I'll just wait for a thumbs up from Alice to make sure that we've got everyone signed in that we think is going to sign in.
It's 7:33. We've got, 72 people? There's probably still more people coming, but it is being recorded. So if anyone does sort of miss the end, miss the beginning, we can always just send that around as well.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Alice. Well, welcome everyone. We're going to get started firstly with an acknowledgement of country. And I have borrowed this acknowledgement from St. Peter's Catholic School in Rochdale. So I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which I am signing in on, which is the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people. We acknowledge the waterways, the land, the sky, and all who inhabit this country. I acknowledge their ancestors and elders and recognize those who continue to protect and promote Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures. We acknowledge the past and we stand together for our future. So welcome everyone. As I said before, I'm the chair of Montessori Schools and Centres Australia, our representative body for schools and early learning centres that are on a pathway towards a genuine Montessori approach. I'm also the principal of Northeastern Montessori School, which is here in the northeastern suburbs of Naarm or Melbourne, here in Australia. You heard Alice say before it's 7:34, so we better get started. But it's actually 4:30 in the morning in Paula's world. So Paula's joining us from the US, sort of Midwest, I'm guessing somewhere. And it's really exciting to have you here, Paula, to be helping us acknowledge the 31st of August being Montessori's birthday here in Australia. And, you know, every time I see the name, that family name Lillard, I think I'm going to put money on the fact that they're Montessorians. Paula, it's been really lovely getting to know you from your book. So if you haven't got a copy of The Montessori Potential, you can get in contact with Alice as well and get your copy. It's fantastic. So we're really looking forward to hearing from you, Paula, this evening. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Paula. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you so much. And it's really special to be with you. I love that we can do this. And I'm sitting here looking at a full moon that's right outside the window there. I'm just going to start screen sharing here and going to get where we need to be. If you'll bear with me for one moment. All right, here we go. So just need to move the faces away from there. Okay, how are we there? Everyone can see all right? Get a thumbs up? Okay. Oh, need to move this so that it's not over my face. Okay. Thank you so much for having me. This is just an honor beyond belief to be able to speak and be invited to speak on Maria Montessori's birthday. I want to thank Alice Champion, Kathy French, and Janice Coffey of the Montessori Schools and Centers Australia for hosting me today, and Rebecca Dallum and Tara Taylor of the Sydney Montessori Training Center for sponsoring this event. And because it is Maria Montessori's birthday, I want to begin by saying a few words about her before diving into our topic today of the potential that we have with the gift she gave us, a unique approach to children's education. I've been looking back over 3 biographies that I have of Maria Montessori that are written in English. And these 3 books of personal letters that she wrote to her family that Carolina Montessori, her great-granddaughter, has edited. And if you've never seen them, they're really beautiful and worth reading. And what strikes me about this woman is her humanity. She is so human, so raw in her expression of feelings, her passion, her determination, her humility, and her love for humankind, especially for children. There's an overwhelming sense of her calling to serve, what she called La Chiamata. And she definitely experienced adversity. She experienced self-doubts, but she was always grounded in her calling to share the hidden nature of how children learn. And Maria prepared herself for this task. I don't know if many people realize how extensively she read the works of others. I wonder if you know that she copied all 600 pages of Edouard Seguin's work. Can you imagine doing that today? Just taking somebody's book and handwriting word for word, copying the entire thing. And she did this to ingest it all. She said to weigh the sense of each word and read in truth the spirit of the author. Maria absorbed the work of Edouard Seguin and of Jean-Marc Itard and admired them greatly. She felt that they were not fully appreciated for their tremendous insights and contributions, but she understood their work and built upon it and upon the work of others. And she gave us the gifts of her own observations, which were that children have an inner drive, an orme that guide them to learn from their surrounding environments. That this means that the environment takes on great importance and must be thoughtfully prepared. That the adult must be prepared to view children in a different light and to treat them with love as sincere supporters of children's inner work. That we must observe, present the materials as she designed in a certain manner so as to speak to the children's natures and respond to what we witness in each individual. And finally, that we offer freedom and responsibility in balance with respect so that the children can become increasingly independent. And Maria gave us this approach that works in all places and all times with all children because it speaks to the universal nature of children's development. So what must we do now with these gifts that she gave us? To move forward, to remember her today, we have to step back and look at our situation, both as individuals and as a community. Because most of us can say that we face challenges. we face challenges as individuals, perhaps with school enrollment, with a difficult parent, lying awake at night, thinking about that one child that you feel you're not reaching quite the right way and it haunts you. And we also face challenges collectively. As Montessori educators, I found that although most people today have heard of Montessori, we are not recognized as the educators with answers that work. And we are not a united group. There is work to be done to move this work forward and to reach our collective potential. So I think of this in 3 steps that I see for us. And the first step is to know our material, to read and study, observe and reflect, to slow down and watch and think in the classroom and outside the classroom. Montessori is not a formula to follow. It is not a checklist of tasks. And it is so important when we bring Montessori into the public sector, into a conventional setting, that we're very careful, that we're clear that it is not a formula to follow, and it is not a checklist of tasks. It is a living, breathing approach. And we must carry it out as Maria Montessori did, not because we worship her as a personality, but simply because the way that she showed us is the way that works best. The second step is to agree on basic principles of Montessori and the paths to manifest these principles. So, for example, if you understand that Montessori promotes freedom with responsibility, but you are giving your students a list of work every day to complete for the morning, you will fail to support their true potential. If you understand that Montessori helps children in their ultimate task of self-formation, but you have many materials on the shelves which do not have purpose in the real world, such as fake fruit to cut with a wooden knife, puff balls children move from one bowl to another, you've got to step back and dig in deeper and ask yourself, how is this activity connected to these principles? If you cannot see the direct connection, if you cannot explain it to your colleagues, then take it out. Be honest, because we can't be in this for our egos. We have to put our egos aside and be humble. We're here to help children. We're on a quest to find the best way to do that. And we need to discuss with our colleagues and with each other how to do this. And we can do it together. Many minds are better than one. And the proof will be in our outcomes. And the third step is to convey the Montessori approach clearly and to communicate it to others. So I love the New Yorker cartoons. And this one is a teacher who looks like she's probably giving a tour to some parents. And she's saying, our curriculum focuses less on rote memorization and more on putzing around. And I love this because it just reminds me we have to be better than this at explaining what we do in Montessori. And I want to just say as a side note, there is so much memory work that we do in true Montessori. It is constant throughout the day, helping children to develop that memory muscle. But of course, you get the point. I hope that the book that I've written is going to help with this, that it will do some of the communicating for you so that you can pick up where the book left off with your parents and with people you are trying to help understand Montessori. I'm hoping this will give you something you can give to people and say, this is a simple way to understand what Montessori is. Or this is why we do it this way in our Montessori school. Or this is why we want a Montessori school in our public district. Or this is why we have to keep this approach alive and intact. With these 3 steps, studying deeply, discussing where principles meet practices, and communicating clearly, we can aim for the potential of Montessori. Maria said, education must be an aid to life. So I step back and think, what do children need today? Every audience differs slightly, but when I asked this question 10 years ago, I got the same answers that I got 5 years ago and the same answers I got after the pandemic and today. And we'll probably still keep getting the same answers for eternity, which is basically that we cannot know what jobs to prepare our children for or what they will be when they grow up. The workforce is changing every month in ways that make to make a living are evolving at a dizzying pace. So in this rapidly changing world, what is an education for life? Well, what we do know is that there are real character traits that lead people to be adaptable and to succeed, no matter their circumstances. And these remain constant, whether a person is born into a dismal situation or the lap of luxury, rural life or city life, high-tech world or an artist community, into an energy crisis or a time of plenty. We all need to develop skills and traits that will support us to think up creative solutions, to envision what is not apparent, to solve problems, and to get along with others. And knowing that many minds are better than one, we must build skills to cooperate easily, to empathize and have compassion for each other, for other nations and other peoples, and to be able to communicate our ideas, feelings, and thoughts coherently across cultures. In essence, all the things that you see here on our screen, and you might think of more. We have to have an education that prepares the next generation for life, for a complex and challenging world. And we do have that with Montessori. Maria saw that education is not what happens in schools at desks with teachers, notebooks, or a chalkboard, that the ability to learn anything is actually inside the human beings in the room. It is not in the textbooks. It is not in the techniques or in the instructor. It is inside each child, within their nature. Learning is an unfolding as mysterious as the evolution of every insect and every creature on earth. And learning is a spiritual experience because as humans, we bring all of ourselves to the experience. You can just look at this boy in this picture. All the parts of our bodies and all the nerves connecting our bodies and brains and all the sections of our brains come to every learning experience and all of our feelings and emotions. Every part of us is always involved when we are learning. I have watched Montessori graduates, of whom I know many now, a few hundred for sure. And these are all pictures of some of the graduates who've gone to Forest Bluff School that I know personally, some of which I taught, whom I taught. And I'm repeatedly amazed and have realized this can't just be miracle after miracle of a variety of children with all their challenges and issues that I saw evolving into these strong, confident, kind, productive, outstanding adults. There must be something that's happening here in these Montessori classrooms and in these families who are raising their children in Montessori ways that is leading to these results. And in my observations, I've zeroed in on 8 character traits that keep emerging. And I define them as engagement, focus, curiosity, courage, collaboration, respect, and resourcefulness. You can probably think of others that you see. I tried to narrow it down. But these traits prepare a person to think up creative solutions, to envision what is not apparent, to solve problems, and to get along with others. In essence, to be productive, contributing members of society and to be happy and successful. Maria Montessori, as you know, did not talk about a list of traits or outcomes. She talked about the human tendencies, the absorbent mind, the sensitive periods, the psychological characteristics, the 4 planes of development. And it is hugely important that we as educators keep our focus on these principles and how they manifest. This is what makes Montessori, Montessori. This is how we get the outcomes. But I've found that parents and people outside of Montessori lingo can misunderstand what we mean by these terms if we cannot hold their attention long enough to explain them well, which is common. So I chose something more accessible to explain and to help explain why Montessori education works, a way that everyone can understand readily. Every parent, business leader, politician sees the need for these traits in future generations. And many schools claim that they are addressing this need. They'll say, we have this STEM lab and our children learn to be innovative thinkers and creative problem solvers, but they cannot show you how. In Montessori, we can actually show exactly how and where this happens. Others are trapped in thinking of children as products, or they have progressive ideas that lack structure, one of the two extremes. Montessori is the answer. Maria figured it all out. She gave us the clues that she saw, and she showed us the way to bring forth these traits through repeated experiences in varieties of situations in the classroom setting that she proposed. So next I'll show you how I frame this for parents and for people who do not have Montessori training. I just want to say again, the training should always focus and will always focus on the human tendencies, the absorbent mind, the sensitive periods, the psychological characteristics, cosmic education, the 4 planes of development, and everything that we learn from Maria Montessori's writings. That is where the work is happening. And I'm talking here for the outside community of what they're going to be able to understand. So here's how we can help anyone to see how Montessori works. We can start by talking about what is not working for so many children in conventional education. And I typically talk about this picture for a few minutes. I'm sure any one of you could talk about it for several minutes about what is wrong with this setup. But it's a very, I think it's a good visual to start people with thinking about why is it that we put an active human being into a chair and tell them to sit still, to take in information only by listening and looking, to give them information on a screen, on a tablet, in a textbook, on a worksheet, something stagnant, or from one person standing at the front of the room. Everyone to learn the same information at the same time. There's so many things about this photograph and about this model that do not work at all with what we know from research and anecdotally about how human beings learn. Maria Montessori saw that nature has given us help for this immense task of helping to educate children, because the child has within her an inner drive to explore and all the tools she needs for teaching herself. The child is active. She's exploring the environment. She is touching. She is using all of her senses. And this is how she learns. She has the tools and she has the inner teacher. So we only need to help her access a positive environment, develop those tools of her hands and her senses to remove obstacles and support her inner drive so that it stays strong. In essence, we need to recognize and work with the nature of the child. And so that means that school is going to look something like this. And any of you could talk for a long time about this photograph as well. I usually talk to people about how the curriculum is completely out on the shelves where the children can see it. They can always be making the connections between the different topics. This is why it's important when we set up our rooms that we make sure that we have every topic represented. Music has to be in the room. Art, all of our artistic expression has to be in the room, not down the hallway in a separate room with a separate adult. Everything has to be connected so the child can see all of this is here for me. All of this is going to be a part of me, and I can use all of it to form myself. The children are active. You can see the material that they're using here. They're moving, they're touching, they're counting. Their teacher is down in amongst the children. The room is accessible to them. They can go right up to the shelf. The older child is getting a review while he's watching what's happening. The younger child is getting a preview while he's watching what's happening and doing his own work simultaneously. There's so much learning and so much happening because of the different age groups, because of the activity, because of the teacher's role and her interaction, and so on. We could talk for quite a while about how exciting Montessori is in action. But now I'll go through these traits and talk about how each one of them is happening. So our children become adults who engage with the world around them. And that happens because from the time they were so little, they came into a Montessori classroom. And the first thing that happened is they were invited to take something off the shelf and start working with it. So by the time they're in elementary classroom at this level here, you can see they come in and they go right to work. They don't wait for the teacher to tell them something. They don't check with anyone. They just go straight into work. They already have in their minds what they want to do from the day before, and they are all deeply engaged in their work simultaneously. They engage because the activities that we've provided are a good fit, a great match for their age and their interests. So you could see this child is doing some working, he's cutting that strawberry. This is really interesting to him. It's really challenging to him, and it completely engages him. Our children develop focus because we're able to match each child with some activity that is the right level of challenge for that individual. So this child is threading a needle in preparation to do some sewing. He's very, very little, and he's completely focused on that experience because it is so challenging, and it's just the right level of challenge, and it's something real that he's been invited to do. And this means that at every age, we need to make sure we're finding that match. So these children are 11. They're working on some algebra. They're doing a very advanced lesson, and they're working together to remember how to do it. And it's really exciting. It's really fun. They get to do it together, and it's the right level of challenge. And that means it draws in their focus and helps them to build their focus and concentration as a muscle. They become people who know how to concentrate. We talk a lot in Montessori about how organized it is and how the order of everything on the shelf, the order of our presentations, but think also of how much organizing the children themselves have to do every time they take a material out. Whatever it is, there's always some organizing that happens first. These children have to be very organized with this math material in order to get the correct results and the correct answer and do the process in a way that's productive. So there's a lot of organizing that they do, and it just becomes part of the way that they function when they're working. So here are some younger children. They're organizing, and they learn pretty quickly just through experience that it helps a lot to line up your tickets before you start. It helps a lot. At some point, often they'll start realizing, wow, why don't we put all of the 1-digit numbers together and the 2-digit numbers together and the 3-digit numbers together? And sometimes you see them even get to a point where they realize, well, it would be really great if we put all the 200s together and the 300s together and so on. And so they begin to organize their work through necessity as they find ways of being more and more efficient as they get older. So this constant organizing really helps them to build an organized mind and their own personal systems. Their curiosity, which is a natural drive that we all have in us, instead of dwindling each year in Montessori because they're not told what to do and what to think and have that curiosity put to the side, instead their curiosity drives their learning. It gets stronger and stronger. So they remain people who are constantly curious about the world. These children are making a chart. It is about sharks. They decided they were really excited about sharks. So these boys got together and they went to the library. They're reading books about sharks. They're drawing illustrations with diagrams. They're writing the information they find in books in their own words, putting it on paper, editing it with the teacher and with each other, and then pasting it on. And then in the end, they're going to present it. And they do this over and over, following their curiosity. The curiosity extends to other topics as well. Here's a child who is allowed to go right outside her classroom into the prairie and find real seeds and bring them in and crush them and put them into the microscope so that she can look at them. So she's able to follow her curiosity. She is writing down her results of what she's finding. She's looking at photographs of slides to see if she can see the parts of the cell or whatever it is that she's working on, and is able to follow that curiosity with a friend. So we see that curiosity building. So much of our work requires collaboration, true collaboration between students. So you see these girls are checking their answers. They have been looking at dividing fractions by fractions. They're only about 8 years old. They're able to do that because of this physical material. And they are looking at a card of selections of different equations they might try, and they're checking their answers together. They're collaborating to do this work efficiently, and they love to be able to do that. Because they collaborate so much, they learn that they need each other to do things, and they learn how to collaborate with different personalities. They don't work with the same people all the time. And so this becomes a real part of the way they approach things. You see these young adults going out to the workforce, and they're so collaborative. They're always looking to work with other people. And they become very courageous. These are adolescents out on a work trip, and they are building a platform. They're making sure that it's level here. There's no adults in sight. The adult is probably around the corner working with somebody else. And they are working together to do something that is very serious in the adult world. It needs to be level. The work they do needs to be of adult standards. And they have the courage to try that and to do that because they've been given this autonomy. They've been given the guidance. They've been given the help, and they've developed so much confidence from their collaboration and so on. So here are some 6.5-year-olds, and they have done a study on fossils. They actually went to the museum because they couldn't get enough information from the books that were available to them. They had to go out into the real world, seek out experts, ask them their own original questions. No one gave them questions on a clipboard. They came up with their own questions they were curious about, and that curiosity drove them out of the classroom, out into the world. They got that information, they wrote it in their own words, they edited and practiced presenting the chart, and then they presented it to their classmates, which just creates so much excitement and so much interest in questions from the others. No one else was studying fossils. And that happens over and over and over. And when that happens over and over and over, many, many, many times, every week, every month, different charts, different activities, these children become so productive and they become so courageous about going out and about presenting to others and having this experience over and over. So they really develop courage. They become very respectful of each other and their surroundings. There's so much of the grace and courtesy that we do from the time they're young. And I believe that just even having these puzzle maps in our rooms and spending so much time with them, we always made sure that every child was always working on memorizing a map, always. And they just went through them every day. It was so much fun for me as an adult to learn all these names. And for those of you who don't know, in Nienhuis, sorry, I'm doing a little brain freeze for a moment. The knob, thank you. The knob is right where the capital city is in each country. For years, I didn't know that. And when I found out, I was just amazed and excited. So there's further that you can go with anything. Then you can start learning the capital city names. But just learning the names of the countries of the world gets children starting to think about what's there, who's there. That's so, it gives them a familiarity and an intimacy with those names, with those words, that gives them the sense of connection with others in the world. I think it sets the foundation for that. So the respect for others. I love the respectful interaction here. He has asked her to quiz him on the names that he's been working on. So that's what she's doing. She's patiently pointing to each one and he's saying them. The respect that our children show for the environment. This boy is pausing in his day to re-roll an apron that he saw on the shelf was not rolled very neatly. The respect that they give just his whole body, the way that his body language of how he is carrying himself, his self-respect, his respect for this object, his respect for the activity and for the environment. It's just so beautiful to see. And finally, resourcefulness. So this is a 3-year-old who needed his shoelace tied. His shoelaces were untied. And because there's only one adult in the room for so many children, the adult was busy doing something else. And so he went to a friend, an older friend who has sat down, crossed his legs. I just love that. And taken the time to tie his shoelace. So the resourcefulness that took, that he had to think, how else could I get my shoelace tied, is a beautiful thing to see. And that resourcefulness extends to everything that our students are doing. So here, an elementary student is able to figure out, I've got questions, I'm going to go look in a book, I'm going to take the book out, I'm going to find information in the world around me, instead of waiting for an adult to tell me what it is I'm supposed to know, instead of waiting to see where I'm supposed to find something or how I'm supposed to get that training as an adult in the workforce, thinking, how can I find this for myself? What resources might be out there in the world? Our students are used to always finding the answers in the environment, not going to an adult and saying, help me, what do I do? So it's important, I think, that we look for Montessori principles and for these characteristics or traits that you have found are important and that you see in your students, to see if we are practicing true Montessori. Look for concentration, look for respect, and look for joy. I want to say a word about authenticity, which is becoming, if you haven't noticed, a buzzword in Montessori circles. It's used loosely sometimes and not always defined and not always implemented as advertised. But there are no authenticity police out there, so we have to look to ourselves when we use this word. We have to be honest, to be humble, and to help one another, to challenge ourselves to be honest about where our practices are authentic and where we are working on it, but not quite there. There's no shame in that. There's no shame in saying, I don't have an authentic Montessori classroom right now, but I'm moving in that direction. I am intentional about it. We are working to be as authentic as we can. I am working to be as authentic as I can. And if we can use that language with each other, we will be so much more credible with parents and with the outside world and with each other. Authentic, the word authentic means being true to the original approach, being true to the original approach and the best of it. Preserving and restoring the best of the original is what the Association Montessori International was created to do. That is their mission. So why does authenticity matter? Because this is the sure way, I believe, to build such characteristics with independence, with respect, and with joy intact. And it is so important, I think, in today's world that we keep coming back to the joy. This is one of our graduates who completed a goal that she had of running a marathon. And I just love the joy on her face. I did it. There is so much in our media today. There is so much pressure. There are so many fears that young people are growing up with today. It is so hard to watch how much they are hearing about the environment, about climate, about the sins of the past, the mistakes that human beings have made. And what I think we have in Montessori is a very positive way to look at human history, to look at nature, and to find the joy in what we have to celebrate of all the positive, because our children need that foundation of positive strength. If they can have the foundation of positive strength, then as they become older and they come into adulthood, they can face the mistakes, the sins, the things that need to be remedied. So it's so important, I think, that we wake up every morning as parents and as educators and feel the joy of what we have to bring into our classrooms to the children, so that they can experience the joy and have that propel them with strength into the challenges of our world. So I just want to say if you have not gotten your training yet, or you would like to further your training, or know someone who wants to get training, I encourage you to grab this QR code and find out about the Sydney Montessori Training Center, where you can learn more about AMI teacher training. They have all levels, I noticed, from infancy to adulthood, which is amazing. And I just want to share that I personally found that taking another level of training when you already have one deepens your interest and your understanding of Montessori in ways that are just exponential. It's so exciting and just gets more and more fascinating and interesting and fun as you explore other levels. So I encourage people to keep going, and for administrators to get training, and people to keep studying Montessori, because there's so much there for us and it is so fulfilling. So here's my final slide. I just want to say, please feel free to access and share the resources on my website. They're there for you. And please help me to spread the news of this book so that we can help more children to have access to Montessori education. And I love that MSCA has copies you can purchase in your hemisphere. That is so exciting. I'm so grateful for that. And so grateful to every one of you for being here with me this morning. It still feels like night to me. It's pitch dark outside. Just so grateful to be with all of you. And thank you for listening and being with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paula. Thank you. We'll give you a silent clap, I think.
Okay.
It's so inspiring hearing you talk about, the potential of Montessori education. I know some of the people that are on our call tonight might have some questions. So if you've got something that would love to open a conversation about, please. We do have a little bit of time for questions this evening. So feel free to use the chat room to pop some questions into if you'd like. I might start out actually, Paula. I have a question for you, and would love to hear some of your perspective on. As a principal of a school, one of my roles is to give school tours and, to talk to prospective parents and to talk to people that don't know a lot about Montessori education. And one of the things I think is sometimes the most challenging to get your head around is to understand how, with so much student autonomy and student choice and that sense of freedom, how that's balanced with order, routine, structure, and responsibility. One of the phrases I hear a lot is, "Oh, I'm worried that Montessori doesn't have enough structure." I don't know. I see some other people going, "Oh,
Yes.
yeah."
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that and how you would explain, how we get that balance?
Right. That's a fabulous first question. And I have found that often when I was giving tours of our own school, you try to say, it's this, but it's that, but it's that, but it's also this. People look at you like it can't be both, but it is. That's why it works so beautifully. There's this balance. It is really revealing to me the questions that people ask. And when a parent says, but how will they know what to do? And what if my child doesn't do anything? Or what if my child only does math? So I talk about the adult's role when they ask that. Well, three things I come to. I always come back to those three pillars that I talk about in the book. The first is the environment. So the environment provides a lot of structure. The routine of the day provides a lot of structure. And you can point out the details of that. The second is the adult, and the adult has the responsibility to make sure that each student is getting exposure and engaging with each area of study. So coming from my own experience as a teacher, I found that the environment helps a great deal because the children see everything and they get interested in things and wonder what that is. They see each other working on different things. So if you're presenting very diligently and you're planning your lessons very thoroughly, you are exposing them to every topic every day. To somebody in the room is getting a botany lesson. Somebody in the room is getting a math lesson. So the children are constantly walking across the room, seeing all these different things, and that makes them interested in what they see. They get really excited and think, oh, I want to do that too. Oh, that looks really neat too. So that happens as well. But the adult is responsible for looking at those records every night. So I explain a little bit the record keeping on a very, in a very vague way, but just for them to know that that's happening, that when they sit down with the teacher at their conference, they're going to be hearing about their child's experience in the different topics, that we're thinking about that structure. We're thinking about those subject areas. The child doesn't have to, but we're doing it for them. And as they get older, they do start to take on that role as well. And you get into lower elementary and you're sitting down with them once a week and saying to them, I didn't see you doing any math this week. What's happening? Or, it is important to develop all the parts of yourself and all of your interests. What's happening with this? What's happening with that? Where's the follow-up work from this? So that they really do start thinking that way and realizing that all of this is important in educating themselves. So when they're younger, it's much more subconscious, but the adult is making sure the adult takes care of it. So I think when they hear that, parents feel assured. And the final is that balance of freedom and responsibility. So they're given some freedoms, but only when they're responsible. So explaining to parents a little bit that concept of how we make sure that they're being responsible and how we help them develop that independence and responsibility. They're not just coming in the room doing anything they want all the time. So that I think really reassures people. I hope that helps.
It definitely does. And it's good to know that some of the things you're saying are the things that I find are coming out of my mouth when I'm, trying to explain this to parents. I often talk about that, children can choose what's on the menu, but everything on the menu is, healthy and good, if we can think about it that way too. It's
a great way to explain it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Here's another one for you. Sometimes there are questions around, is Montessori, right for my child? Maybe it's not right for every child. From your perspective, I'd love to hear what you think about, is a Montessori approach right for everyone?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think different people would answer this differently depending on their experiences. I've experienced that sometimes the home culture is so extremely different that the child, and sometimes children are okay with that. Sometimes children struggle so much with that. And you try to help the family and you try to bridge that gap. But if you can't and you've tried for a whole year and or longer, sometimes the disparity is so extreme that the child cannot really engage with the environment that you're providing them. And the family needs to find an environment that matches more of their home life and their way of wanting to do things. So I have experienced that. So I don't know that it was the child really, but it was the child's world that wasn't a fit. Or I don't like using the word fit, but was not helping them, was not working for them. And another thing that I've found is that it depends on the limits, not so much of Montessori, but of the school itself and the classroom itself. So sometimes we don't have the resource for someone, or that child needs so much one-on-one, hand-to-hand guidance in order to progress that they aren't getting what they need in an environment that's designed for a lot of autonomy and independence. And in some situations, people are able to have another adult there that's able to do that for a child. So there are situations, I think, where we need to say, come to a resolution with a parent and maybe even with other specialists and helpers to say which environment or what do we need to do with this environment to help this child. But I think that a lot of people are having really positive experiences with doing that. And therefore they would answer the question, with more information than I have even. So I really respect that and think that it's wonderful. I don't think that every school in the world should be a Montessori school. What I'd love to see is that first picture of the traditional conventional school setting that is the norm around the world, that Montessori becomes the norm around the world, and Montessori-esque, Montessori-like classrooms become the norm and that becomes the minority. So there are people and children who do seem to do all right in that setting, but I don't think it should be the norm, because I don't think most children do well in that setting, and it isn't matching our human nature. So I hope that helps a little bit with answering that. And when people say to me, what about my child? Is it going to work for my child? I always ask a lot of questions and try to understand where they're coming from and where their fears are and where their concerns are. So much of it has to do with just that parent's mindset. And so many children who are struggling so much in another setting are just so relieved and set free and become themselves and just so much happier and fulfilled in a Montessori setting. I'm sure that all of you have had that experience. So that is what I often try to help people to see. And I don't go into explaining everything I just said to a parent who asked that question. I'm just saying all of that to you all as educators, and my own personal thoughts on that.
Yeah. Thank you, Paula. That resonates a lot and actually gives me something to think about too. One of the things I've been talking a little bit about in some of our education circles here in Australia is, I think a lot of our students cope well in a traditional system. And I think I'm a personal product of that. I did well by the standards. I got the good grades. But I think that's why I really love the title of your book being The Montessori Potential, because I think there's so much more that students could be getting out of their schooling experience, rather than that, that picture that you saw, that it's, that picture in our mind when we think about a traditional education and, students stuck to a desk all day long, So I love the idea that schools will become Montessori-esque, and that really becomes the norm for how we educate our youth.
Mm-hmm. I also just want to say something about that. The title to me so much too is about not claiming perfection. And I think that's so important. I don't think our school is perfect. I don't think a classroom that I've taught was perfect. I don't think someone else's class. I mean, we have to always be thinking about what more we can do and be looking for potential. And I think Maria Montessori would say that the classroom wasn't perfect when she was seeing her own work. So having that humility and leaving a lot of room for growth is that's human, and that's what we need to do with ourselves too, and with the children and with the students. I think it's so important not to have some ideal in our minds that we get really stuck and rigid with. We have to keep thinking about the potential. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Paula. There's a few comments I'll just highlight in the chat room as well. Fiona has said that she wants to thank you for emphasizing the importance of student conferences on a weekly basis. Feel this is the key to the benefits of a Montessori education. Not to put you on the spot, Fiona, but wondering if you want to say a little bit more about conferences, maybe how you've seen them work really well, maybe any challenges that you can also highlight as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'll just reread my comment very, very quickly. Just remind me what I've written.
Yes, so I know what you were saying. You're pointing out that it is really important with the elementary students to have a weekly one-on-one meeting where you check in with that student and you go over their work and oh my gosh, so important.
That's exactly what I'm saying, Paula. Sorry, I just went a blank there. I was writing something else as well. I do, from my experience, I do find that the curriculum and the state compliance, and you might or might not be aware, but within Australia, we have many states and each state has a slightly different compliance. that sometimes the teachers are so distracted with ensuring that compliance to the state regs can actually take away from that liberty of the child to educate or to follow their own education. And I just wonder how, or whether you've got any tips or tricks to help those teachers, particularly when they're talking to parents.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. You know, I can only say what I think I would do in that situation. So for us in the United States, the core curriculum and the requirements from our public school system by state, we cover a lot more in Montessori than what's in there. It's just in a slightly different order. So I always looked at what we did was we took our Montessori albums and I know others have done this too, and people can borrow other people's, but we laid out every single presentation that a child would have over the 3 years, everything that was possible. And then for each child, those were their records. And so I would check off that I had presented it. And then I would check off when I really felt that they had done follow-up work or shown that they had mastered it and they really understood it. And so those records were for me. But when I sat down with a child once a week, I had those records to the side. And I suppose what I would do, and that's where I would say to them, oh, you've been doing a lot of this. Oh, I gave you this presentation. You didn't do any follow-up work on that. Tell me about that. Or, show me what follow-up work you did do. Oh, that's so neat. And can you tell me about that a little bit? And then I can say, okay, they understood it. Or, oh, they did not understand this. Well, let's dig into this a little more and go back into it. And sometimes that would be an impromptu presentation right then and there. But if I were in that situation where I also had a list that the state was requiring, I think depending on the personality of the child, wanting to make sure that they didn't get too bogged down by the sense of a task list, I might be a little open with them about it and say, there's some things we're supposed to cover here. And which one would you like to do next week? Or, I have these presentations to give you next week. And just have them have some play and some say in it. I'm going to put a group together with you and these two friends, and we're going to do that next week, or and just make that happen. Or I just want to see that you've done it with the Montessori materials, actually. So I just want to talk to you for a minute about what you remember and what you understand about that. I point this out in the book, how important it is to help our children verbalize what they know. And that's a really important last step. They're not always going to remember it, and they're going to forget it year to year, but to just remind them, it's a little reminding exercise of, let's see what you remember about fractions, and remember when we did this, and can you tell me what that means? And we're looking for really basic language, but we want children to be able to say, this was division. This was, not just this was this vague, weird thing that I did. I loved it. So I think that's important. But when we take the Montessori curriculum, and if we look at all the presentations that we've been shown in our training, and we match it up with whatever list we're given that we're supposed to teach, you can usually find that it's in there. It's pretty rare for some extra thing to be on there that you can't work in a Montessori fashion. So I think it's really important to take the time, or to get some help, or to see what others have done to match those topics up, so that you can say, oh, already doing all this. It's here, 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 and here. I can just slightly move the order of this to match and to meet the requirements. If you have a certain monthly or certain requirement like that. I think it's really important not to abandon our presentations, because the presentations are so magical and so much better, and they're so much more impactful than what might be coming at us from a conventional standpoint. So we've got to be able to do the Montessori. And sometimes it's just a matter of doing a little hat trick, so to speak. I hope it's possible. You can tell me.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with what you're saying. I think the challenge is perhaps when one has parent interviews and parents are asking, well, is my child achieving at an A level or a B level or at a C level? Now, to me, that's very foreign language, but, it is the reality.
I always say A. Every now and then, and I've seen this particularly with families that are coming from a situation where it is extremely important, like it really feels like a matter of life and death to them, that their child succeed. A family who's immigrated to the United States, for example, in their first generation. And we just have to be compassionate that it really is very serious for them, that they know that their child is going to be the best and do the best. And they're throwing themselves into it. And so are you throwing yourself into it? And is their child taking their work seriously? And I found over time that trying to convince them to just relax and trust the process it was never going to satisfy the need that parent had for me to say, your child is outstanding, because they really are. Every child is outstanding. Your child is outstanding. Your child is working really hard. They are going to succeed. I really believe in them. And you can believe in them too. And here's why, and here's where. And sometimes I had to just take a moment to put my Montessori, love and acceptance of everything aside and give them what they really needed to hear, because it's also true. And that was really helpful. So I was always like, your child's getting an A. They would get an A. They're absolutely outstanding because it's true. And the parent will not be able to let go until you say that. And then hopefully they can. Sometimes they can't. I had one family who had an only child, and the child was so incredible, and he's an adult now and he's so incredible. And they would always say, well, that's all just really lovely. Thank you. But there must be something we can work on. And I literally would be like, well, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give it to you. There is nothing that you can do differently to help your child be more outstanding. He's just an amazing human being. So
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Love that. I love that positivity, Paul.
Oh,
yeah. And I have to resonate as well. I actually, digging into the Victorian curriculum, the Australian curriculum here, the Montessori curriculum and the materials and what the teachers do far, far outshines what is in those curriculum documents. So, a lot of times actually we're actually trying to remind teachers sometimes the opposite of actually remember, if we're doing our reporting against the Australian curriculum, that oftentimes our standards as teachers are so much more, so much higher sometimes. And actually what the students are doing are far beyond where their peers might be, or where the expectations are in terms of the Australian curriculum. So I think that's where yeah.
No, keep going. I'm sorry. I just want to say something before you go to the next question.
Yeah, no, just going to finish by saying I think in my education career I've been in government schools and lots of different independent schools before coming into Montessori schools. And when I came to Montessori and saw the breadth of the curriculum and the rigor of the curriculum and the joy of the children, I just thought this is what every school should be doing.
Yes, I love hearing that. And I do think this is a really important place for us to come together and communicate with each other, because I know there are people out there who are looking sort of confused perhaps and thinking, but I don't have any language materials past the such and such, but there's no fraction work, or there's no. And it might be because of the training that they had. And so I think what's really important is that we share with each other that there is more, that the curriculum is complete, that it is there. And if it isn't for someone, it's not their fault. And it's not Montessori's shortcoming. It's out there for you to go and get it. And that's where taking further training and getting out and finding out what else is out there is really important, because what I see too much is a Montessori classroom where the curriculum that teacher has been shown does have limits and it stops somewhere. And it's such a shame, because they're very frustrated and it feels really frustrating to be in that situation. And so then their school comes in and says, because there's none of this in Montessori, we're going to give you this program to do for your language, or this program to do for the reading part, or this program to do for the science part, or this program to do for the music, because you don't have any music past, the first presentation of the bells. And so it's really important to spread that news that the curriculum is all there, and that is true, and that it's there for you to find it. It's there for you to have it, to try to keep finding ways to get more training so that you have it at your disposal. And that's where going to refresher courses and furthering, even if you've had tons of Montessori training, there's always more. There's more in depth with the music. There's more in depth with geography, geometry. There's psychogeometry, the book that Montessori Pearson has put out. And you look through some of these and you find, oh my gosh, I never thought of doing that. That's so amazing. Where did that come from? That Maria Montessori had shown a different way of doing this, or that this presentation was in there. So keep looking within the Montessori material that we have accessible to us, because it just goes on and on and on. There's no way you could find the time to do it all. So I love that you brought that up, Janice, that we really have to keep the bar high and keep going and keep presenting. That was one comment, feedback I always got at our school was Montessori, AMI trainer would come through and do a consultation. And one thing they would always say is present more, like, more throughout the day. Just keep presenting, throwing those seeds out. Don't sit around, really just be really busy as a teacher. And I think that's where it's really exciting and fun. And that's where you see the children start to get so active. If the teacher is really busy engaging with the children become busier and busier and working and focusing deeper and deeper. So if you're standing around and you're getting a cup of coffee again, and you feel like going, down the hall again, and you've got to answer a parent email and it's on your mind and things like that, it will show in the children in the classroom. So it's so important to close that door and put away the cell phone and be completely present and keep giving those presentations, because that is where the magic starts to happen. So those reminders for ourselves to dig in deeper. I just want to make sure I don't get a chance to say that I am amazed by Christina Hondros's animal. That is incredible. I'm so curious to know what that is. Only in Australia would you have a pet like that. What is it?
It's my chicken.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I just had to point that out if nobody noticed. It's just really amazing. Thank you for bringing your chicken. Okay, thank you. All right, back to you, Janice.
I was looking for Christina. I thought, is it a koala? What's going on? Yeah, no, it's a chicken. Love it. Wonderful. Well, I don't know if there's any other questions
I see one.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Can I point one out? Alessandra asked, is there anything a Montessori teacher can do to prepare a child going to a traditional school after being in a Montessori environment from birth to 5 years old? From birth to 5 years old, I would say for sure, everything that we do, especially with grace and courtesy and just those beginnings of reading, I think if we focus on helping them to get as far as they can get with their reading, reading is something that children can educate themselves with for the rest of their lives. If they have that passion, if I knew that my student was going to go to traditional school after my primary classroom, I would really make sure we focused a lot on that and the beginnings of math, but just the love of learning. And I think you're pretty safe in that environment to focus on your curriculum. Where I see it be a little more challenging is when you know that your 7-year-old, your 8-year-old, your 10-year-old is about to go off to traditional school. And I think then that if you know there's something they're going to need to do that's different in the school they're going into, it can help for them to have a little review or an introduction to something. But what I tell parents and the child themselves is that everything you do when you change from one classroom to another and another school is going to be it's just going to feel completely new. I don't care if you've been in traditional school your whole life. When you transfer from one school to another, it's going to feel completely new. So what we want to focus on is that in Montessori, we are working on this characteristic of being adaptable. The adaptability is what's going to save someone no matter what happens with them. And that adaptability comes from being confident and knowing that they're not going to know, and being okay with not knowing the answers, and being okay with not knowing that adult or those children. So focusing on those traits of adaptability that we know we are fostering in the Montessori classroom is what's going to help. And we see that a lot with the adolescents when they're going to leaving our school. They leave in 8th grade and go into high school. And to help them to realize that when you get there, all those children coming from conventional school that are going into that public conventional high school, it's all going to be new for them too, actually. I mean, they might be used to taking tests and writing notes and doing some of those traditional things in a traditional way, but the teachers will be new, the classrooms will be new, the routine will be new. It's also going to be new for them. And what our Montessori students have that's an advantage is that they've grown up not thinking that there's some answer they're supposed to know or find, that they're going to be told and that they're going to have to say. They're okay knowing that there might be a lot of different answers and that we don't know what they are. And so they are seeking answers by their own means and being comfortable with that, being comfortable with not being right, being comfortable with mistakes. All of those kinds of characteristics are what are going to help our children with transitions. Not knowing all the things that you're supposed to know in 9th grade, because you're going to learn them within weeks. You're going to figure out, oh, this teacher functions this way and this one functions that way. And I notice in our Montessori graduates, if we really focus on the Montessori when they're with us and we don't get ahead of ourselves and start, my trainer always used to say, preparing them for a famine. You wouldn't prepare someone for a famine by gradually starving them. You would give them as much food as you could. So if we focus on our Montessori while they're with us, then they're going to be the best prepared when they get there. And that being said, there are a couple little things that we do with students before they go to high school, because they're at that age where they're so self-aware and they want so much to be prepared for the adult world. We show them note-taking techniques. We give a little mini lecture and say, okay, we're going to practice kind of picking out the main points of what I just said. We're going to help learn how you organize your binder, your work, what it's like to take a test. We do a lot of those little practice things because we're preparing them for the time and culture that they are stepping into. So we keep it to a minimum because we don't want to take away from all the beautiful things they could be doing in their classroom, but There are sometimes little things like that. This is what a test is like. Here are the things to focus on. Here's how to understand what that number means when you get something back, or that letter grade, and what you could do if you wanted to go to the teacher and see if you could improve it. So that's what I always find they do. If it wasn't an A+, they'll go to the teacher in their conventional high school and say, well, I mean, this A- is great, but what am I missing? Because they are always so used to doing the best they can do for themselves, not to impress somebody else or to check it off and move on. But they just want to learn everything. I love that. So if we keep focusing on the things that we do so well, I think that helps prepare them the most.
Amazing. Thank you, Paula. There's another question here from Sally. And Sally has asked, you talked about the importance of striving for authenticity in Montessori's original work or approach. And how would you go about helping staff to understand this when the approach has been diluted over a long time, school? One of the things, if I can jump into while you're thinking as well, some of the things that we do at our schools, I can just share, is we do try to read together. We could probably do more of that, but really reading some of the texts to sort of deep dive into some of the core principles and really talk about them. One of the things we have started doing as well in our staff meetings is to present materials to one another. So we've said to our teachers, bring along a material that you love to present and bring along one that you don't love to present. And then we, work on it together and just sort of workshop that. And that's been really great. It's really been really great to learn about the materials, how they're built from each stage, but also helps build confidence, I guess, as well. And then the other one that I just mentioned as well is that MSCA also runs the Genuine Montessori Pathway, which is a quality assurance program, but it's really a self-study and really helps you look at what the principles are of the Montessori approach, and then work out where you are and what the next steps might be for you as a school. So if you're keen to learn a little bit more about the Genuine Montessori Pathway, GMP, reach out to Alice and she can help you talk about that too. But yeah, Paula, any further thoughts on that?
Thank you for that. I think you hit on two really key points, and the first is getting the staff together. I would say that actually a third component that's really important is to have somebody be the leader. So whether it's the administrator or someone on the staff who has the vision that you are after, somebody who can guide in a way, but you want everybody to be coming together and feel really comfortable expressing themselves and being honest about what they're feeling and thinking. I had that photograph of the teachers sitting in the grass and discussing, and we also have that once a week. We sit together for 2 hours, and it's every Thursday after school, and we have those discussions. And someone does have to lead it, because otherwise, you can end up going in all these tangents. But to set a tone that's very accepting, especially when you have a group of people who are coming from different perspectives. Everyone has their perspective personally, their own experiences, and they might be coming from different trainings where they see things differently, or they feel really attached to the way they've been doing things for a while. I often hear people say, but the children love this activity. So asking questions to dig into the principles and helping people to articulate, where does this activity meet these principles? Is it something that has something to do with the real world? What skills is it helping the child to develop? Why are they engaging with it? Are they engaging with it because they get praise afterwards, or because that's how they get the permission to go outside? side? So just really questioning and helping people. People can't progress if they don't feel safe admitting or talking about their own shortcomings or their fears or concerns. And I find that sometimes it takes even a couple of years to help someone in the group realize that no one is going to ridicule them, talk about them behind their back. That's one of the things we really work hard at in our school, is to help everybody feel really comfortable saying, I don't think I did this as well as I could, or I'm not sure why this isn't working, or I love doing this presentation, but I'm really wondering, everybody keeps saying maybe I should take it out of my room. So that setting that tone is just crucial. And I think that having those honest conversations and talking about wanting to be the best we can be for the children, if you keep bringing it back to the children, what's really best for the children, not what do we like, what do we want, even what the parents want, but what's really best for each child, it often gives you this very plain path that's just so obvious. Well, it really would be best for the children if we did it this way, with taking off their coats and putting their shoes away and so on, or whatever it is that you're trying to find a better way to do it. And the other thing is just brainstorming together on better ways of doing things. I mean, in our school, we do things like trying to figure out what's the best way to not ruin the floors with the salt from the snow in the wintertime. Well, the teacher will have a very rigid idea. The head of school has an idea. The maintenance person who has to mop it every day has an idea. But if we keep trying different things and we're open to discussing it as a group, I mean, that's something that, you want to come back to. How is it really Montessori if we're telling the children this and making this happen and it's still not working? If it's still not working, the children aren't responding to the way we're asking them to do this, what else could we be doing? So always evolving and having that become your way of doing things. Usually, I find that even as an administrator and being the leader, sometimes I had to say, wow, I really felt so attached to this idea, but you all are right. You pushed back on this. And now that I let you try it that way, I see that your way is actually better. So being able to do that, I hope that helps in finding, evolving as a school.
Fantastic. Thanks, Paula. I think we might have time for one last question, which will be from Joanna. Joanna's question is around how we should relate to new ideas and concepts that are introduced in Montessori education, meaning that concepts and ideas that do not necessarily belong to Maria Montessori, but are included in the curriculum based solely on the intuition that they would align with Maria Montessori's approach.
I'd love to hear an example. I'm struggling to imagine what that might be. Is anybody willing to unmute and tell us what you mean? I'm just not sure what kind of principle there might be.
Yeah, I'm wondering. Oh, there we go. There she is.
Okay.
Hi, I'm here.
Great. Thank you.
So I've been experiencing a lot of new ideas that go around Montessori circles, and I am primary teacher, and I struggle with staying authentic and just applying Montessori's principles. But then in the same way, I see a lot of people that I follow, and they are very influential in the Montessori world, especially in America, that I feel like they bring their personal beliefs into the education. And I do not want to get more into this because it's a delicate topic. And I feel like we as educators, we should stick to educating children, but not necessarily bring our personal belief system, because that's not our method to improve.
Okay. I understand now. Thank you so much for clarifying a bit. Okay. I can think of a hot topic right now happening with that. What I'll say to people, so for example, with diversity, equity, and inclusion, which has become a really strong movement in the United States right now. And so people will say, okay, well, in our Montessori curriculum, we don't really have anything for this. So we're going to bring in an outside expert who's not Montessori trained and ask them if they would train the staff. And then that person gives some ideas and some ways of doing things and some exercises and some worksheets and all these kinds of things. And then the teacher's really confused about what to do. That's just one example. It could be any topic, really, that's kind of a new thing or something required by the state or something that's important to consider. What I've done and what I think is really important, and especially if you get your team of teachers thinking this way, and sometimes you're by yourself, but if you're with a team of people, it's really helpful to have this quest of always trying to find where the principles meet with something that's coming in. So when I think about that topic in particular, I think really deeply about where in Montessori's work, and I go through her books and I really think about how does she see the idea of inclusion? How does she show us how to include all the children, how to accept all the children, how to respect all the children, how to speak with respectful language of other people? How, we handle things so sensitively in Montessori. We're so ahead of these other programs, and to keep being authentic to what is there. And sometimes it just takes a lot of time to figure out how to articulate it. But I feel that we're already doing so much of this, and it's a matter of trying to find the language to articulate where and how we do it already. And I find that a lot with methods that people introduce and that ideas people introduce for children who have greater difficulties, learning difficulties, for lack of a better expression, that often what we do in Montessori already meets those needs. And when I sit with a specialist and I show them what we do with the sensorial materials or whatever it is, they say, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. That's already what I would do if I had something like that. So sometimes it's a matter of showing someone where you already do it, just like you do with the curriculum. But I do think that we need to keep looking at what Montessori showed us. And sometimes there isn't something there with the exact language or the exact way to do something. And we do need to do it a little differently. We do need to evolve and change a little bit. But we want to always be doing it really seeped in those principles. And too often, I think people have, it's our ego that gets in the way. We get an idea of a way to do something and we say, this is great, everybody do it this way. And especially if there's money involved, that can get really tricky. So I think we just have to question each time. And I'll just leave you with one example. I walked into a colleague's classroom one time, and I had been really struggling with the presentation in elementary of the converging and diverging lines and parallel lines. And the presentation had never really come to life for me. I always found that it fell kind of flat when I gave it to children. And I walked into my colleague's room. Our classrooms all open into each other. And so I walked into the other lower elementary classroom to ask the teacher a question. And we have very good grace and courtesy in our school. So I walked up and I stood and waited while he was giving his presentation. And he was almost screaming. He was like crying. He was like, no, I can't believe it. I'm never going to see my friend again. And the children were laughing. They were just completely involved in the presentation. And it was the divergent lines that the children were going to go further and further away from each other on their lines and never see each other again. And it was this complete epiphany. It was like, I never thought of presenting it that way with so much animation. And so sometimes we see something like that. It was Montessori, it was a way of doing it that brought it to life. And I think Maria Montessori would say, yes, bring in that emotion to reach the children. What does it take to reach the children? So I walked back in my room, and from then on, I just loved giving the presentation that way. So it wasn't different from what we'd been shown in the training per se, but it was an evolution for me. It had to do with the principles of connecting the children to the presentation. So that's just one example of where I hope those delightful things will happen for people, of where they find that they can do something that is. And finally, I'll just end with one other thing. I keep reading lately in Montessori's writing, she'll say, I cannot tell you exactly what to do. She keeps saying that. The teacher has to decide. The teacher has to see what is in front of her and decide what is best to do. And so we do have to know that she had faith in us, and she saw that that was the way it has to happen. And we do have autonomy in our classrooms to do what is right with that child in front of you. And it's not going to be a follow the instructions exactly type of experience. It's going to be a breathing, living, human experience. So I hope that's helpful. This has been really beautiful to be with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paula. I feel inspired, and there's so much I'm taking away from this evening, and I'm sure many other people feel the same. There's lots of comments in there saying exactly that. So thank you so much. Thanks for getting up at 4 a.m. It's been lovely to see you and to meet you in person. And if you haven't got Paula's book, The Montessori Potential, get onto it. It's a really beautiful read. Thanks everyone for joining us. It's been really lovely to see you all this evening, and hopefully I'll see you again another conference or within our Montessori network. We have Grassroots that's coming up in September, so there's only a few days left to register for that. So if you're not coming along to Grassroots in Melbourne, 2 more days, two more sleep, says Alice. Yes. To register. So if you're keen to come along to that, do reach out. It'll be a really wonderful event. Thanks, Paula, again. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a beautiful evening or morning.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.